Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on your time zone, I guess. Thanks for joining webinar with myself and Jason Kemsley from Uptime Solutions. My name is Ben Spector. I'm head of solutions at Momentum. I work with sort of internal and external stakeholders to help drive processes and automation. Jason from Uptime Solutions. Uptime are an outsourced IT provider, really. They help you MSPs deliver your MSP services bigger, better, faster, bolder. Jason's going to give us a proper introduction.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Delivering very much help desk services around the world. So we see lots of tickets, lots of times. We see lots of people with sales and sales automation. So we get to see a bit of everything, which should hopefully gear us up for some good ideas coming up in this one.
Cool. So today, Jason and I had a conversation a few weeks ago, trying to work out what sort of topic we wanted to talk about to do a webinar together. And the really obvious point of frustration that both of us have had over the last few months has been around automation. There's been this massive explosion of excitement for ChatGPT and OpenAI, and everyone's jumping on this AI bandwagon. But I think what everyone's completely forgetting to do is deal with the predictable automation within their businesses first. And so today's agenda is just to understand first why most businesses are jumping on the AI bandwagon without proper workflow automation in place first. Jason's probably going to talk about that. Then we're going to have a look at automating some of the predictable things before we move on to the unpredictable, those kind of AI scenarios. Help understand the difference between predictable and unpredictable workflows. And we've got a whole load of example automations across service delivery, sales, marketing, various parts of your business. So that hopefully by the end of this session, you're going to have a load of really tangible, actionable things to take away and actually implement within your tools. So first up, what do we mean by predictable automation? It's automating the repetitive, the usually process-driven scenarios that we can reasonably predict. If you would click the same sequence of buttons, it's predictable. So for example, if a new email is sent to support@mymsp.com, we're going to create a ticket. We're going to send an email back to the customer confirming the ticket details. Everything about that scenario is predictable, so we can easily automate it. Jason, any comments?
I think these are the two biggest buzzwords, I think, for 2023, is predictable and unpredictable. We have not knowingly, to some degree, gone through an unpredictable to predictable roadmap. The biggest thing that comes to mind is moving to an MRR standpoint as businesses and as MSPs. And part of the premise of that move was we wanted unpredictable revenue to become more predictable so that you can staff better, so you can put tooling in that has monthly costs and all these other things. And when we look at 2023 and what's coming and the disruption stuff that's happening and staff retention issues and attracting new talent, one of the biggest things that fixes all of this is having as much predictability as you can possibly have. The more that you have predictable in your business, the more that you can put solutions in place. And I'm a firm believer that you can make unpredictable things predictable in some way, shape, or form. You just need enough data to be able to do so right.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So obvious areas to look for predictable automation. I think these were my points. Obviously, there's the service desk, everything around ticketing, SLAs, due dates and times on tickets, contract management, sales pipelines, your marketing elements, both the prospecting and the nurturing. Anything to add there?
I think the biggest thing is taking it back to basics. So we've got some fantastic tools coming into the market. We've got some fantastic automations that are coming about. What we really want to do here is strip this back, and we don't want to jump to the last stage, which absolutely there's a position for those. We want to bring it really, really back to basics. I haven't seen many MSPs that have their automation nailed for the stuff that gets to before they even become a customer. And that stuff is often the bit where most MSPs are quite open about, and they struggle with it. I think that's, Ben, possibly why you've become such a name, is because you've obviously got such expertise in that area. But there is so much customer experience that can happen with automation. There is so much improvement. There's so much pipeline bits that can all happen with automation. And I just wanted to fire an easy one out here. We use Momentum. I'm happy to share. We use Momentum, but regardless of what platform you use, when a contract is won, it automatically moves to a pipeline area that issues a welcome email and a welcome pack to the customer. And that can obviously be generic. That can be whatever it looks like. That is a really nice and easy way using automation to set out expectations from day one. That could be, hey, we're going to be in touch in a week. That could be, we're going to be in touch in 2 weeks. But this isn't all about saving time. This is about improving customer experience, creating expectations, and creating those what I call polishing touches that create the journey of the customer, right? When I go and do something with my bank, or I go and do something with an insurance provider and I make a change, for example, I get an automation to say, hey, we've seen your change, we've accepted it, it's gone through. Doesn't mean anything, but what they're doing is letting me know that they've got their stuff together, and they know what I've done, they know that I've done it well. So what we're looking to do here is improve everything from customer experience as well as getting you back time.
Yeah. And a lot of these, the examples we're going to look at today, to me, feel like the real bare minimum. But the reality is that, aside from the work I do at Zementum, I also mentor a couple of MSPs and sort of help them build out these automated processes. And invariably, whenever I start working with a new MSP, none of this stuff is in place. And it's what I think are the really obvious basics. I think it would be interesting from your perspective, Jason, when you're onboarding new customers, obviously they've got their own PSA, you've got PSA, you've got that integration between the PSAs. But what's your experience of the sort of level of maturity most of your new customers are at when it comes to the automation within their PSAs?
I would say 1 in 20 use it to such a degree that there is some thought that has to go into it. I have 2 things that I come across weekly that I wish I could shake people for. One is signing up to a vendor without asking what their security credentials are, and the other is not putting in basic automation, which could radically make your life easier. I've been through, and I think you have as well, obviously having sold your MSP, I've been through, this world is relentless. I wake up every day and you're getting barraged, and then you go to sleep and you wake up, you get barraged. Some of these automations can make a radical difference, and a radical difference for your customers. So to see so many not yet doing it gives me some hope that actually there's a lot of improvement that we can still make, and therefore hopefully make our lives easier as well.
Yeah, and I'd just say, we want this session to be as bi-directional and engaging as possible. So if anyone's got any suggestions that they think we've completely missed off, or ways that you think we could enhance some of the suggestions here, or any questions about the things that we're suggesting, feel free to either drop them in the Q&A or just happy to open up the chat to anybody as well.
Even if you've got a service desk problem that you want to create a workflow for, but you don't know how, give me a test. See if I can bring out my geek side and find a solution.
I was just going to check. Attendees can chat. Oh, attendees can chat with everyone. Needed to do that, and panelists can chat with everyone as well. There we go. Brilliant. Right.
Perfect.
So, without further ado, ideas for predictable automation. So the first area we wanted to have a look at was service desk. Some really obvious ones here. We'd already alluded to it. When a new ticket's received, send a confirmation email to the customer.
Absolutely.
The next one is kind of, it could go either way. Some customers don't really want to be involved with the support process. They just want to fling something over the wall at you, wait till you've dealt with it and know when it's done. But if you've got customers who do want to be a little bit more engaged with the process, you can set, when you triage that ticket or dispatch it, whatever term you use, you could send the customer a notification to say which technician's actually going to be handling it, what SLA has been assigned to it, what the next steps look like, what priority it's got, and what the timeline to resolution looks like.
Absolutely, and that's a key bit. Every time there is a change on a ticket, there is an opportunity for automation. So when that ticket comes in and you're saying, hey, we've received your ticket, great. Most people do that. It's a fairly standard automation. I would suggest you can make it a bit more bespoke and a bit more customer friendly and have some variables in there, but great. Then when someone is assigned to it and in Autotask you have the when changed or when updated, you can then send, this is now with X resource or X engineer. They're working on it right now for you, reading, briefing on documentation or talking with the team, and they'll be in touch shortly. You'll never lose a customer for over communicating. I've never seen anyone lose a customer because they received too much comms. And that is, you're more likely to receive a call to say, where's this at? So you've spent 3 minutes that you could have spent putting this automation in already.
Yeah. The next one, I very, very rarely see this implemented. It's one of the first things I'd always implement with my clients. It's chasing customers when they're not responding to the ticket request. If they've opened the ticket with you, you've emailed them back asking for further clarification, and then just crickets, nothing comes back. It's such a time suck as you scale your operations and you have more and more tickets. If your engineers are spending a quarter of their time just chasing the open tickets trying to get responses, so you could put in an automation that says, if the ticket's been idle for 48 hours or 2 days, send out a first gentle reminder and change the ticket status to strike one. And then if it's in strike one and it's idle for another 2 days, by this time we're 4 days, send out a slightly firmer reminder, change it to strike two. And then after another couple of days, send out that final reminder and possibly just automatically close it at the same time. Tag it in the PSA that it's been auto closed, so that if it sort of comes back when you're reviewing your tickets, you can see that it got auto closed rather than being closed by an engineer. But just completely automate the process of chasing the customer. And then your engineers don't need to look at them.
And this seems like such a simple one. If you implement this, what you're doing is you're making your engineers not have to worry as much about queue management. So you're not just saving time, you're saving mind space. And that mind space is space you could be grabbing other tickets. For us, it drastically changed the amount of tickets an engineer can have at any one time ongoing. If they've got 6-8 tickets that are going through this process, they could have 12, 14 tickets because those 6 or 8 are being automatically updated, or they're never becoming stale, is what we typically refer to it as. We have something pretty cool here, which you can take to this degree if you want, but just as an idea. What we do is after 24 hours, we send out a response. That response is pulled. We have 100 responses that we've wrote, 100 customer-friendly responses that say something like, hey, Sue, we really want to make sure that you're working and as efficient as you can be. Just want to check that this is fixed for you so we can get it closed off. Cool. Next one, it pulls a different one. Next 24 hours, it pulls a different one of the 100. So at no point do they feel like it's a robot.
And is that completely randomized?
Completely randomized, yeah. So it will just pull, it's indexed 1 to 100, and it just picks a random number, takes that, there's a variable for the first name of the user. And it'll always be, the chance of you getting the same one 2 times in a row is obviously very, very slim. And it feels like you're having a human touch, but it means an engineer, once they believe they fixed the ticket, they don't have to touch that ticket now until it either the customer responds or says, hey, no, I've still got a problem, or it will just auto in 3 days close off, and had regular comms throughout, which make you look good.
And I think you use Autotask internally.
Correct.
As your PSA. Is that something you can do natively in Autotask, or are you using a sort of third-party application, or is it something bonkers you've built yourselves?
We pull the response from a webhook. So we've taken it a little bit further, but truthfully, it took very little time compared to most things that we all want to do. We go and implement, there's a big demand at the moment to take the greatest shiny new PSA that's out or whatever. We're talking a 20th of the time that it takes to do any of that work, and drastically changed the total number of tickets that can be looked after by X total number of engineers. And increased customer experience as well, which should be the driver for a lot of these, right?
I think you should write a blog article explaining how it's done, because I'm very curious to know now.
I'm planting seeds here, and then maybe we'll come back and we can see how they've grown, or show some real detailed.
Mm.
I could grab a dev and we could run through exactly what it looks like.
Yeah, I think that would be really interesting. I'm going to skip that fourth one for the minute because I think it's just really obvious. Ticket closed, send a notification to the customer. Like, I don't think anything else needs to be said about that one, really. But then the next couple I think are really interesting. Again, I'm a massive preacher for getting your technicians to focus on the due date and due time for tickets. If they're sorting their ticket list by due time, they can literally work through the next thing that needs their attention. Otherwise, you risk kind of fishing through tickets and picking out the ones that look fun or look easy. And the result is you can't keep on top of SLAs. You can't actually prioritize tickets in the way they need to be. So if you introduce a lot of automation around those due dates and due times, it makes it very easy for your technicians to know exactly what the next thing they should be working on is. So there's a couple of really easy automations there. When we're sending an update out to the customer and the ticket changes to waiting customer or whatever status you're using, then push that due date or then due time out by a few days, because that ticket doesn't need to be looked at again. But then when the response comes back in from the customer and the ticket status changes to waiting on us, or whatever your customer response status is, pull that due time back in. If your next response SLA is 1 hour, then bring the due time back in to 1 hour from the moment the customer responded to your ticket. So your list of things that you need to be working on is always being dynamically resorted according to what is the next priority. If a new ticket has a first response of 30 minutes and a response comes in with the next response due of an hour, those priorities will shuffle around to ensure that you are actually working on the next thing you should be working on.
And that ties straight back into waiting customer response, right? Is we go to waiting customer response, we send an automation, push the due date back 24 hours or whatever. Okay, then when the automation happens again, push it back again. We don't need engineers to be looking at stuff if it's not to be done. And this is as much about making sure they're working on the right stuff as it is increasing customer experience and saving time. If your everyone has a problem with this, engineers that cherry pick and say, I'm going to take that one because it's easy, it's 5 minutes, it's going to get my stats up. If you're keeping your due date accurate and your due time accurate, you can use that as an accurate. It's not about what they're on, it's about what are they not doing that's important, because they've taken the easy one, right? And that's
When the
something
overdue
you
stuff
never
goes
measure.
red.
Absolutely. And there's always a ticket that everyone avoids because it's someone they don't want to speak to, or it's an issue that they don't feel overly confident with. But someone's going to have to pick it up at some point.
Not me. The next one, I actually thought this was a really good suggestion. It's not one I'd thought of before, but a client I was working with a couple of weeks ago has an internal process that they use. Whenever a ticket hasn't been touched for 24 hours, they want to post an internal note on that ticket asking the engineer for an update. And you could take that a step further. You might also want to send that to the service desk manager to let them know that there's a ticket there that hasn't had an update for 24 hours. Again, it really just making sure tickets are being kept active. In reality, though, if you're using the waiting customer chases, the chances are a ticket's not being touched because you're waiting for the customer. So it might be a bit of either or. I'm not sure I can see that both of those would be in use together, unless you were specifically using it when it's waiting us rather than waiting customer. If it's waiting us and it hasn't been touched for 24 hours, someone's getting fired. That's not good.
Yeah, so we have this, or we and a couple of others, but I can't think of the exact timeline it is, have 4 different workflows for this. So one if it's critical, one if it's high, etc., etc. So if it's a critical ticket and there's been no update in 2 hours, post an internal note for the engineer and notify the SDM. So you can do this you can make this far more complex if you want to, but what we're doing is we're stripping it back to basics. An SDM is there to keep things ticking, and they're there to stop things from becoming stale, because that stale ticket is always going to be what the customer is upset about. So to prevent that from happening, and to prevent then the time you've got to spend from a more expensive resource staying on top of it, just a little internal note to say tickets had no update in X amount of time will, as much as it's a automation and it's robotic, it will prompt the human to do something about it rather than ignore it.
Yeah. This next one, I think, was one of your ones, Jason.
Absolutely.
And it really resonates for me. I'd never really thought of a sensible solution to it, but this really hits the nail in the head. The number of times I'd speak to one of my junior technicians who literally spent the entire day working on the most pointlessly simple issue, like password reset. They took that ticket at 10 a.m. 4 p.m. They're still fumbling around trying to work out what they're doing. They
Absolutely.
should have escalated it, but maybe they didn't know, or they were a bit scared to escalate it. So this was a really good one. Just post a note. If they've recorded more than an hour working on something, check with the senior engineer.
And this goes back to making that unpredictable predictable that we spoke about. So none of us as technicians, as techs, whatever we want to call ourselves, can predict what ticket is not going to go well. You just can't put your finger on it. You're going to pick up a ticket you think is 5 minutes, and it elongates and turns into something completely complex, and something that maybe you're no longer the right person to be working on it. So we had a look. We saw, right, I don't know, 500 tickets. Of those, 5 of them turned into 10+ hour tickets, let's say, for example. If we can get those 10-hour tickets, of which there's 5, down to 2 or 3 hours because they're being worked by the right resource at the right time, we've saved a person for a week. So what we done was exactly what it says. We put in a workflow, and we actually have this at 1 hour, 2 hour, and 4 hour. But when an hour of work time goes in, a workflow fires that puts an internal note in and says, please run this by a more senior engineer before you put any more work time into it. Then happens again at 2 hours, then happens again at 4 hours. And that's a 2-minute task. Is, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm going to continue doing. And the senior engineer says, yes, absolutely right. Or says, whoa, hold up a second. No, actually, you're way off. It's this. And you stop yourself from going down a rabbit hole. So it's very difficult to quantify sometimes the time saved, but this must save internally for us 40, 50+ hours a month of stuff that would otherwise, first, second line engineers, if they get something that is slightly beyond them, they want to learn, they're eager, they want to see this stuff. But we've got to make sure there is a matrix or some sort of process in place that means the customer doesn't suffer because of their willingness to learn.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great one. I think it's one that many I haven't seen. I don't know if I've ever met an MSP, certainly not in the last 6 months that I can recall, that has something similar.
No, well, none of my clients have ever had it. I've never thought to do it myself, but it is genius. And I think comments I'd add to all of these, it doesn't matter if you're break fix or MSP. You really ought to be managing tickets in the same way. It doesn't really matter if you're a one-person band or a service desk of 40 or 50. The same principles apply. And if you put these processes in place while you're small, it's a hell of a lot easier to manage the processes as you grow.
Absolutely. And the analogy that comes to mind is, building a house. If you haven't got those strong foundations, you can put the most expensive conservatory or whatever you want on top of it. We want to get these nailed, because ultimately, when you go and put in new tools and integrate them together, when you go put in I don't know, some cool technology in Intune or Endpoint Manager, if you're doing all that stuff but you haven't nailed your customer experience, or you haven't nailed the workflows or efficiencies internally, I know this stuff isn't sexy. I know it's not the prettiest and fun thing to do, but it really does reap rewards that mean you can do more of the fun stuff that you want to do as an MSP, especially for your staff as well.
I was just thinking, at risk of quoting Chris Tim here, he often says that people need to stop constantly switching PSA because they think the next PSA is going to be more automated and the grass is going to be greener. you've got just spend the time focusing on whichever PSA you're currently using, or which, even if you haven't got a PSA yet and you're still using a ticketing system, just spend time, invest the resources into fixing what you're doing in your current one before you even begin thinking about sniffing around the next shiny one.
Absolutely. It doesn't change, it doesn't move the or solve the problems, right? It just moves them.
Yep. um so, then the next topic I wanted to have a look at was contract lifecycle management. Again, really unsexy, but this is probably, I've picked these out of things that I would do in Autotask. I think realistically it's going to be pretty much the same. ConnectWise calls them agreements rather than contracts. So this might be agreement lifecycle management in ConnectWise, or whatever Halo calls it. The principles are the same. Um, you know, the things you do not want expired contracts, because expired contracts means you're not billing and you may be doing work that you're never going to get paid for. You need plenty of time to go through the renewal process if you don't have an auto renew in place for your contract. So you need plenty of time to have the discussions with the client. And there may be other certain sort of thresholds and warnings you want to trigger. So the first really obvious one, when a contract is 60 days away from expiry, send an email to the account manager, create a task, put it in their calendar so that they take the time to actually look at the contract, figure out, what do I need to do? Do I need to speak to the customer? Is it going to automatically renew? Make sure that in the PSA or whatever we're using for billing, we're extending the validity of that contract or renewing the contract. The next one, yeah, I've seen quite a lot of times where, even though with the best will in the world, you wanted to get the contract renewed, sometimes people forget to do it or something goes wrong. So, once we get to a day beyond the expiry, if it hasn't already been deactivated or it hasn't been renewed, then maybe we want to automatically deactivate that contract and send a final angry reminder to the account manager. Just check this, please.
Sure. And the big thing that comes to mind here, Ben, and I don't want to go off on a tangent. These are all things you will find other services-based businesses doing. We're a service industry, right? Well, I know I included like to think we're a special part of the world, and we do something no one else does, which we absolutely do. But we are services businesses, and these are all things you will find in any other services business. And the good ones have this stuff, the bad ones maybe don't, and they're a bit more manual, whatever, and they miss things off for you. So this really is super crucial stuff. And I know it doesn't feel to many MSPs like this is important, but it is when you're building a scalable business. It might not be a problem based on where you are now, but when you double in size or you go through a busy period and you add 3 bodies, we're creating predictability here is what we're doing.
And then were these other ones I think the third one was one of your suggestions, if the contract value goes above or below a certain threshold, then flag it for
Yeah,
management
absolutely.
review.
Yeah, so this is about visibility. So obviously we're a fair size, you could say, or not. This won't be applicable to some, but when you get to the point where you've got a salesperson or salespeople, or you've got people that might be dealing with contract uplifts or new contracts, one of the key things is making sure, obviously, you're letting go of a bit of trust, or you're having to trust someone there. So the way we handle making sure we don't lose a big opportunity, that we were first in line to win or whatever, and to make sure we're also prepared to deliver for it, is when we're quoting something and it's over a certain value. Let's say you're an MSP and you've just quoted, I don't know, £1,000 a month opportunity. What we do is, when that's created, fire an email out to the SDM to let them know, hey, we're working on this opportunity, and then they have ample time to raise with you, hey, I'm a bit concerned because if we win that and that goes live, we need another 2 bodies and we haven't even started the process. So this is all about, as you get bigger, creating visibility, letting people know things about sales and account management way before you reach the point. Because for most of the people I see, they win an opportunity and then they're trying to backpedal, right? So we're just trying to get ahead of it a bit and make it a bit more sustainable, so you can go and get those recruiters in gear, or you can get those ads out, because it's obviously not easy. employing at the moment.
No, it definitely isn't. The last one, block hours. I don't often see block hours contracts being used. Personally, I'm not a big fan, but if the customer's committed to buying 50 hours and they've only got 10% of those hours left, but you've used 45 and there's 5 left, what are you going to do? You're either going to run out of time and you might mid-task have to stop working, or are you going to just send them an invoice for the new block, or do you want to notify them in advance or send the account manager a notification that they're about to run out of time so that they can have the softly conversation with the customer that we've run, all that money you gave us a few months ago, we've spent it all, and it's time to pay some more. Again,
Absolutely.
it's just one of those communication points, really.
And I see lots of, in proportion to those that do block hours that I've spoken to, I see a lot of them have the problem, which is I need them to add blocks, but I've got an issue I need to work on. I'm going to work on that issue because I don't want to leave them in a bad place, but they haven't agreed to the hours they need to add. It's all about just getting ahead again. Is this stuff should happen very easy, very transactionally, not when you've got an issue and then you refresh their contract and see, oh, this is a 1 hour issue and they've got 45 minutes left. So it's just removing headaches. There's enough things to be worried about as a tech business owner. Renewing a contract when you've got a problem sat in front of you is not one of them that you need.
This is where we start to get to my area. We've got a big section head in our sales pipeline. Obviously, Zementum is a sales platform, or Zementum Grow is a sales platform, helps you get from the point at which prospects put their hand in the air and said, I'm ready to have a conversation, through to having that signed contract, deposits paid, and passed off into the PSA. As Jason mentioned, they use Zementum within Uptime to help manage their sales processes. So I figured here we take it a step further. We're going to have a look at some really specific automations within Zementum that are very easy to use. And I've even included some screenshots.
Would you mind if I was agnostic enough to say these are ideas you can put in any platform, Ben?
No, these only work. You could only possibly. I'm trademarking these. You can only use them in Zementum, and if you want to use them in some other crappy sales system, you need to pay me a license fee for them. Before we get started, so we've got a question from Malcolm. Do you recommend contracts that are for 1 year? Do you recommend contracts that are for 1 year and have to be renewed in the PSA each year, or rolling monthly renewals in the PSA? From my experience, which is mostly with Autotask, it really doesn't handle monthly rolling contracts at all well. You will literally have to go and manually extend each contract when you get to the end. I don't know which PSA you're using, whether it supports it better. What I would say, taking my technical consultant hat off and putting my business consultant hat on, I'd much rather see you locking them into 36-month contracts with an annual 5 or 10% increase to the fee than sort of scrimping out and getting bent over into a month-to-month contract. Because if you're really going to deliver value to your clients, a month isn't really enough to prove yourself and deliver value. You're saying yes, it is Autotask. So yeah, Autotask is really shit at doing month to month. So you kind of have to do fixed term contracts.
Yeah, and I know Mal. Mal's a wonderful chap. So maybe we can take this offline as well, Mal. But definitely 1 year. At which point then a good account manager will own the regular comms. I assume you're wanting to do monthly rolling because you're wanting to keep visibility of it and making sure things are ticking over and happening. That's when you move into a QBR-like pipeline, which I'd have a recurring ticket for or something. What we have is, if we have a year contract but we have 4 monthly check-ins or whatever, is we'll have a recurring ticket to initiate that with some sort of checklist, rather than using contracts. Rather than having a contract that kicks off a different point, we'll have a contract that is truly for the length. What that means is that you don't have to renew it, etc., and you don't get all of these auto-renewed contracts. But we use a recurring ticket to kick off the interaction or the visibility, rather than using the contract to do so. The recurring ticket has far more customization in Autotask, certainly, So you can have things like checklists for consistency, or place a call to them, or whatever you want to do on that monthly, quarterly, whatever period. When you start to get super complex with it as well, I know you've got quite a few customers. If you have tiers of customers, you can then have a recurring. You can set up a recurring ticket for that customer. Say they're a, I don't know, gold customer, whatever. To say, right, they have a 2 weekly recurring ticket that opens where we do a top to bottom on all their platforms or whatever. And then you can start to also choose where that goes or where that's given.
Thanks for stepping in there. Yeah, recurring tickets are quite a good way of managing things in Autotask. So promised you screenshots. Here we go. The marketing team have even introduced color. So what? So, great example here. When a proposal's been sent, really simple. Move the opportunity to the proposal sent stage. So I use Zementum for my own sort of consulting work as well. I've got two stages around doing the proposal. I've got one to prepare the proposal, and then one when the proposal's been sent. So when something moves, when I actually send that proposal, it makes sense just to bump it across from preparing it, which is with me, to the proposal's been sent, which means it's with the prospect. And so Zementum's automations are all built around the concept of triggers, and then you can add filters, and then you can have multiple actions. So here, the trigger is the document gets updated. The filters being the status has changed to sent, because we only want to fire that automation in very limited circumstances. I only want to fire it for proposals, so I can also say that the type is a proposal, and the action is to update the opportunity and specifically set the stage to proposal sent.
And could I just add some context to that quickly, Ben? I get a lot of people ask me about why are pipelines so important? And I know that I'm working on it, and then I know it's won or it's lost. As we will start maturing as a sector, if you want to call it that, one of the things that you're going to start seeing more and more people talking about is backtracking your pipeline. I'm sure this is something you do a lot of, Ben, or talk a lot about. And the concept is working out, right, to reach our targets, like we need 3 customers to go live this quarter. Okay, how many proposals do we have to have sent to get 3 go live? And maybe we have to send 10 and 3 of them sign off. Okay, how many proposals do we have to give or create to get 10 proposals sent? And you work your pipeline backwards, and what you end up finding is how many leads you need in order to reach the number of go lives you need. So just to add some context to that, I know it doesn't feel important to some right now, but until you start collecting this data in the right section of your pipeline, you'll never know quite what you need to grow your business the size you're aiming to be, if that makes sense. So when it comes to marketing, if they said to you, right, we can give you 5 leads a month, you wouldn't know if that is really good or really bad. And so if we knew that we needed 20 leads to convert 1, and that's what the pipeline looks like from start to finish, then we know, okay, every 4 months we're going to convert 1 on average. Then you can start putting your staffing pipeline against that 1 customer every 4 months, and you can start to create some predictability. That's where all of this is going. I know it's a boring word, but we're just trying to create that. We know when things are happening.
Next up, when this was one of your suggestions, I just went out and did the hard work doing the screenshots and stuff. Whenever a quote gets accepted, we're sending that confirmation email to the customer. So here, the trigger is the document being updated. Again, the status changes to 1. This time, I only want to do it when the type is a quote, and my action's just quite simply to send an email. The subject line here is thank you. It's coming from the triggered entity owner. So that's looking like it's come from the opportunity owner themselves. So it's not generically coming from Uptime Solutions. It's coming specifically from Jason K. Again, really simple.
And this, again, this builds out. I've seen an MSP use this in a really cool way. So they had this actually fire and BCC a person in their organization, and that person sends out a goodie box when someone signs up. So, and it's probably quite obvious, there's not many that do that just yet. So what they have is, as soon as it goes to 1, they actually send out a video. It's a pre-recorded video, welcome, etc. And it just says, thank you for signing up. And then there's a 1-pager on a bit about them. And then it also BCCs the SDM, their service desk manager, so they know this customer's coming. What do you need to do to prepare? It also alerts their person that sends out a little goodie bag to say thanks for signing up. And so we have instantly just removed 3 or 4 emails that need to go and happen manually, or some mind space that you need once you've won a customer. You can get straight into how quick can we get that revenue live.
Yeah, I've seen some other really interesting hacky ways of kind of further integrating with the PSA using this email process. So if you had a custom field on the opportunity in Zementum for the auto task ticket number, for example, you could then include that value within the subject line and BCC it to your support email address. So it's then going to create a ticket. It's going to have an attachment, which is the PDF of the quote that's been signed, so that everything's sort of there. Obviously, Zementum's already going to pass things through to an opportunity and auto task for the sales team to deal with. But you might also want to create a ticket where we don't have a specific integration for.
So this creates we actually use this to create an onboarding ticket ourselves. So when something's won, create an onboarding ticket.
Yeah.
And then in the contents of the email, we have how they can kickstart onboarding. And when they kickstart onboarding, the onboarding ticket is already created. The checklist is pre-populated with all the things we do on every onboarding to create consistency.
Yeah.
And there's no, if someone moves it to 1, that's it. You don't have to touch it.
Makes sense. Oh, here we go. I spoiled this one.
One
When
ahead.
I forgot about this one. Yeah, again, this is creating a service desk ticket. So this time the document updated as the trigger, status changed to 1, type is a quote. This time I'm sending quote accepted, and then that merge field for the opportunity ticket number, where I put my auto task ticket number into a custom field. It's coming from me, it's sent to the support desk, and here I'm attaching the document, I'm attaching the signing log, I'm attaching the payment log. So everything that needs to go is being sent over there for this onboarding ticket. Is that how you're doing it, Jason?
It's very similar. I think that's a great idea. Not enough people send a copy of the contract out.
Yeah.
For the other side to keep hold of. And so that's a great point. When you've won something and you go and do stuff, also send them a copy of that contract.
Well, Zementum sends it automatically. Once everyone's signed the document, it sends the final sort of PDF package to all parties that signed it.
Even better. There we go then.
There we go. No automations needed. Are you sending everyone 2 copies now? The copy we send and your own copy?
Must be.
What was this you said earlier? It's impossible to over communicate.
Well, absolutely. Yeah. I'm glad I said
in
that
doubt,
now.
send it twice. What was this one? When a quote or proposal gets updated, update the opportunity value, e.g. with the total revenue or total profit figure. So many people don't do this. Almost every time I get on a call with a Zementum customer and we're sort of having a look at ways they can better improve their processes, all of their opportunities have a value of 0.
Yep.
And that's because we need to use an automation in Zementum to populate that value automatically. You can either fill the estimated value with a sort of finger in the air figure, or if you're creating your quote or proposal in Zementum, it's got all the line items. We know how long, whether it's a 12-month, 24-month, 36-month opportunity. Zementum will multiply out the 36 months by all of the figures in the document, and we can then use this automation to populate that automatically into the estimated value field. And so here, trigger really simple. Whenever an opportunity gets updated, and then the action is to update that opportunity with the specifically update the estimated value with the opportunity's total revenue. We could also use the opportunity's total profit, which is revenue minus cost. We could, I've seen some MSPs that measure their pipeline in terms of MRR rather than total contract value. So there you might want to say that it's the opportunity total monthly, for example. There's loads of different values you could use depending on how you actually measure your pipeline. And then it's quite important if you're integrating Zementum with HubSpot as well, for example, that estimated value field in Zementum is the one that gets synced with HubSpot's deal value field. So if you want that full visibility in HubSpot into this marketing campaign generated these new contacts, which resulted in these new opportunities, which closed this much revenue, which is what I call the sort of full chain of custody reporting for the lead generation, you need to ensure that the estimated value in Zementum is getting correctly populated so that the deal value in HubSpot gets correctly populated.
Yeah.
Lots of maths. Sounds very complicated.
Absolutely.
Call me if
And
you're not sure.
it's about also being able to share control, right? So if you're working on a £500 a month opportunity and suddenly it becomes £2,000 a month, and you have someone that looks after recruitment, or you have someone that looks after the service desk, this stuff gives them weeks and weeks of advance notice of, hey, we're actually working on quite a sizable opportunity now. I'm not saying we've won it yet, but can you look after this deal, because it's just gone from £400 a month to £5,000 a month. I know that's quite an exaggerated scenario, but I think most people do go in. We have the sort of land and expand model that's quite popular in this industry, where you go in with 365 licensing, and then they say, actually, we need help with our servers, we need help with this, and suddenly it becomes much bigger, and you haven't realized the value early enough to prepare for it early enough.
Yeah. And I think you can kind of take that a step further, because in Zementum we can do a load of forecasting as well. If you set an opportunity's probability, which is a percentage, and you say that opportunity has a probability of 50%, and the expected close date on that opportunity is the 30th of June, we can forecast and say that we're expecting 50% of that opportunity's value to close in June. And so you give that visibility to the other people involved in the business. If they're looking at the forecasting, if they're suddenly seeing £150,000 of revenue expected to close in June, someone probably needs to start thinking about hiring and making those other process decisions.
And I know I said it before, and I'll just say it once more. I know this stuff is not fun. I know it isn't. As a business owner, at some point you're going to think about, do I get a salesperson maybe, or whatever that is. You can't afford to be grabbing every new tool that comes to the market if you're not nailing how you're growing your business. At some point that has to come to an end. So what we're trying to do here is just create, right, I know how my business is growing, I know how it's filled, I can put a salesperson into that role because they've got a pipeline and I get email notifications on whatever they're working on or updates. And we're just trying to prepare you for what is going to be the next stage, which is everyone wants to start growing and start making the most of their business.
The next one we're starting to get in, we're now moving from GCSE to A level, or whatever the Americans would call it, key stage 2 to key stage 3. We're starting to get really complicated by this one. And this was an example from one of my clients in the UK who wanted to automatically create their MSA or contract and send it for signature whenever a proposal got accepted. Now, it's important, they didn't want to send it when a quote got accepted. They only wanted to send it when a proposal got accepted. There was no sense in sending an MSA whenever somebody ordered a laptop. So here we're saying the trigger is whenever a document gets updated. Again, we only want to fire it when the status changes to 1, and we only want to fire it when the type is a proposal. And here we've got 2 steps. So the first step is to create the document, and it's going to take it from one of the Zementum templates, my managed services SLA template. And then the next step is to send that document by email to whichever contacts were associated with the original proposal. Would I do it this way? Probably not. I don't like introducing complexity into the sales cycle. I would much rather include the contract within the original proposal. So I'm only asking them to sign 1 document to move on to the neect stage. But their lawyers had insisted on doing it this way, so we needed a way to achieve this in Zementum. And then, in fact, I didn't take a screenshot of it, but we ended up taking this a step further, because we were saying, well, we only want them to sign an MSA the first time a proposal gets accepted. If we send them a follow-up proposal, we don't need them to re-sign the MSA. So we broke that down into two automations. One of them to say, to create that MSA, but then whenever an MSA got signed and came back, we populated a custom field MSA signed to yes. So we could then check as part of this first workflow, only trigger this if MSA is blank. If it's yes, we know they've already signed one, therefore don't send one out again. I should probably have done screenshots because talking that through, I'm like, even my head's spinning.
and this must have a positive effect on your conversion rate. There must be, when you seem slicker and when you look like you have your theoretical stuff together, it must have a positive effect on your conversion rate. If you're able to, in a very slick fashion, proposal, contract, or whatever way round you do it, is that something you have experience with, Benny? I can imagine it can only be a positive to your conversion rate.
It is, and I guess taking my Zementum hat off in a way and putting my sort of mentoring hat on, if I send my proposals out of Zementum, they look really slick. I can introduce that automation. And if I'm trying to convince someone that I know what I'm talking about and I get this stuff, then having that slick process helps to deliver that message. And so I think, if you're the MSP, this client is coming to you looking to help them make their business more technologically slick, showing them how slick you are is going to, I think, deliver that message. We've got our ducks in a row and we're going to help you get your ducks in a row.
Especially when so few are doing it right. This is a now thing, because so few have a slick. I saw an MSP the other week that they were quoting something, so they couldn't talk all afternoon to me. They were busy all afternoon because they were creating the documents. It blew my mind that this still happens. So if you can put some automation and some efficiency in this stuff, you will actually move to being a market leader quite quickly for very little effort.
Yeah, 100%. So this one was more starting to look at, I think MSPs, they're great at sending that first proposal out the door. Hopefully they're using Zementum, so it literally only takes 10 minutes. But if they're not using Zementum and it takes them all afternoon, they're still going to get it done and they'll send the proposal. But then they drop the ball because I think there's this mentality. We're all engineers at heart. None of us are salespeople at heart. And if we don't immediately get a yes, I think we just kind of forget and move on with our lives. So really simple things. Whenever I send a proposal, I want a task in my calendar 3 days later, just to remind me to do something about it. If I haven't had a reply or haven't had a call about it, give them a ring, pick up the phone, give them a ring. And so here, my trigger is when an opportunity gets updated, specifically when the stage changes to proposal sent. I want to create a task that's due 3 days after by 5 p.m., 3 days after. Type is to do. It's a medium priority. It's going to be associated with the opportunity and the contact, and it's going to be there sitting in my calendar. We were going to do a little bit of a live demo of automations in Zementum. We're way slower than I thought we were going to be, so I figured we'll just skip.
I like talking too much.
Nathan. So we're not going to do that. The very last bit we wanted to talk about, because we'll try and let everyone go by the top of the hour, was we've looked at service desk, we've looked at the contract life cycle, we've looked at some of the sales process. The bit we haven't looked at yet is marketing, prospecting, nurturing, and how do we sort of life cycle manage the nurturing process. And it was just kind of putting a couple out here. Personally, I use HubSpot for marketing. Obviously, HubSpot has that native integration with Zementum, and Zementum has the integration with all the PSAs. So you can line up this perfectly integrated revenue stack, as I call it. But a couple of ideas here. Whenever a contact form gets submitted on your website, enroll that contact into a weekly nurturing list for 3 months, for example. When I implemented HubSpot in my MSP, 5 or 6 years ago, the hardest part was getting content. For these kind of nurturing campaigns and inbound strategies, content is so important, but it was really difficult to get. Tech Tribe didn't really exist. Thankfully, Nigel came along and it's now got this massive community, but they also put together this monthly marketing content pack, which contains a load of blog articles, a load of nurturing emails, a load of social posts. You're paying what, $49, $50 a month for membership there. Take this monthly marketing pack, load it into your HubSpot or ActiveCampaign or Keep, whatever marketing automation platform you're using, and build out this automated nurturing. So when that contact first submits a contact form on your website, maybe they're not ready to have maybe they're not ready for a quote yet, maybe they're not ready to have those conversations. But if you just don't communicate anything back, they're going to go elsewhere, they'll forget who you are. And it's all about sort of finding that moment in time where they're thinking about the problem and your nurturing email lands at the same time. And there's this explosive moment of, shit, this is it, this is what I need. And then they'll pick up the phone and speak to you.
I think too many consider an opportunity, or when an opportunity is lost, they consider it lost, and that's it.
No means not today. No never means
well,
never.
there we
Or
go.
no rarely means never.
I wasn't going to come up with something as smart as that. So thank you. But just because you have worked on 5 opportunities that have not come off, then stay in their face. And yeah, that can be once a month. You can choose what the appropriate timeline is, and that content can be copied from Tech Tribe wherever. But stay in their face, because most of the time, if you keep doing the good thing, they're going to come back around. They're going to keep coming back around and back around. It's if you go through contacts, and I know how easy it is to do because I once done it. When someone is a no, they go into lost pile. That's it. If you continue to churn through those no's and just write them off, you actually really debilitate your ability to grow in the future, because you could have been nurturing those for a year, looking good and looking like you've got your stuff in order and you know what you're doing. And it only takes the day where, and unfortunately this happens, the day where they've got an issue, might not even be their incumbent failure that's caused them to have the issue, but if you stay in front of them, you will get a phone call, or you will get someone reply to you one day and say, oh yeah, and then it was well worth the 5 minutes it took you to implement this automation.
I have quite a funny story there. I think a couple of people need to run. Yes, there will be a recording. It'll get sent out afterwards. If you don't receive it, just send me an email, ben@cementum.com, and I will make sure you get it. I have quite a funny story to tell though about this whole nurturing thing, and it's being on the receiving end of the nurturing thing. Several years ago, it was about 2017, I'd been talking to a HubSpot marketing agency about trying to get our own HubSpot implemented properly, because it just wasn't really set up the way we needed. We weren't seeing results. The proposal I got for them was, it was just too expensive at the time. And so I was in that position of saying no, but I didn't mean never. I wouldn't have said it to them, oh no, maybe one day. I just said, it's not a good time, no. And they were nurturing us for several months. And it must have been almost a year later. And I have what I kind of, I jokingly, it's my toilet moment. I was quite literally sitting on the loo, scrolling, Facebook or whatever it was, or MySpace, frankly, back in 2017, scrolling social media on the loo. And I got an email, a nurturing email from that agency while I was in the I was in the right headspace with a moment of time where I didn't have other things to think about. And the nurturing email just landed at the right time. I got straight back to my desk. I picked up the phone and we ended up signing a contract that afternoon to redo our implementation. So that for me was the real conversion moment of, that's how important nurturing is. Hit them at the right time with the right message while they're in the right, mind space, and you could convert them. So don't burn your prospects. Keep nurturing them.
Completely agree.
And then again, sort of coming back to the nurturing thing, the first nurturing point on the left was about the really cold prospects, getting them warmed up to the point at which they're ready to sign their first contract. But what about upsell, cross-sell to existing customers? And so if you're smart about segmenting your customers, if I was looking at using Autotask, Zementum, and HubSpot here, in Autotask, if I have a load of custom fields to say yes or no for each service we offer, like cybersecurity bundle, Microsoft 365, backup, support, whatever it is, if I know that they've got 365 and support, but no backup and no security bundle, if I sync that across to Zementum and I can sync it across to HubSpot, I can start to segment my marketing lists in HubSpot based on the fact that they don't have the cybersecurity bundle and do really targeted marketing. Stop doing newsletters. Nobody gives a shit about newsletters don't really sell. If you segment your data, and these are really easy ways to segment, you can then deliver targeted content. There's no point trying to sell a cybersecurity bundle to 17 customers that already have it. If anything, they're more likely to unsubscribe from your emails because they don't feel relevant.
HubSpot are excellent at this themselves. They will get you on a bundle and then they will keep nurturing you on the cool features that you could get if you go up. It's the bit that takes businesses from good to great, I think, is in terms of financially, just to be specific, is you don't always have to win a customer. Sometimes you can just increase your average customer value or add a service to existing customer with simple marketing as well.
Yeah. I think that was it. I promised to let you go on the top of the hour. We're a little bit over. Recording if you need it. If you do want to have a look at Zementum, just go to zementum.com/demo. If you want to get in touch with Jason afterwards, I frankly find him in a local pub.
Yeah, if I don't drink.
Turn up at any random pub. Oh, neither do I.
But no, if if there's any of those service desk ones or anything that really got your geek tingling, feel free to fire me an email. Happy to talk through some of the logic behind some of ours if you want. It's Jason K at uptimesolutions.tech.